You wake up tired. You check your phone before you even sit up. You already feel behind. Now picture someone 40,000 years ago waking up in a shelter made of branches and hide. No alarm, no inbox, no deadline. You probably imagine their day as nonstop struggle, hunting, starving, running from something with teeth. But the real answer is far stranger. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the version of hard work you live with every day didn't exist for most of human history, and why your body still hasn't caught up to the one we invented instead. Anthropologist Marshall Solon spent years studying hunter-gatherer societies still living traditionally in the 20th century. He expected to find people working constantly just to survive. He found something else. The Jew/Honsi people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the most studied hunter-gatherer groups on Earth, worked an average of 15 hours a week to meet their basic needs. 15, not 50, not 60. Sit with that for a second. Most of your work week is more than double what some of our ancestors spent acquiring food entirely. So what did they do with the rest of their time? They rested, they socialized, they told stories for hours, they slept when they were tired, not when a clock told them to. This wasn't laziness. It was efficiency built over hundreds of thousands of years of trial and error. Early humans learned which plants fed them, which animals were worth chasing, and when the effort wasn't worth the calories burned chasing it. Here's where it gets stranger. Researchers studying the Kong San, another Kalahari group, found that even within that short workweek, much of the labor felt nothing like our modern definition of labor. Gathering food often happened in groups. People talked, joked, taught children, and paused often. The line between work and social life barely existed. Compare that to your day. You wake up. You commute alone, often in silence. You sit at a desk for 8 or 9 hours, frequently in front of a screen, often isolated even when surrounded by coworkers. Then you commute home, alone again. But wait, if 15 hours a week was enough, why didn't it stay that way? Why does almost no one on Earth still live like that? The answer involves a trade humanity made, without realizing it was permanent. Anthropologist Richard Lee, whose fieldwork among the Kalahari foragers became some of the most cited research in the field, documented something else that surprises people. Even the food itself required less effort than expected. A single day spent gathering mongongo nuts, one of the staple foods in the region, could provide enough calories to sustain an entire family for several days. There was no incentive to gather more. Storing surplus meant carrying it, and carrying it meant slowing down a mobile lifestyle built around following resources, not stockpiling them. This is the detail most people miss. Hunter-gatherers weren't poor by accident. In a sense, they were wealthy in time, and that wealth came specifically from not accumulating things. The moment humans started storing surplus, something fundamental changed, and that moment has a name. Anthropologists have a term for what changed: the agricultural revolution. About 12,000 years ago, humans started farming instead of foraging. And this is the part textbooks tend to undersell. Farming didn't make life easier. It made it harder, longer, and far more repetitive. Skeletal remains from early farming communities show something archaeologists didn't expect going in. Compared to hunter-gatherers before them, early farmers were shorter. They had more dental disease, more joint damage, and more signs of chronic nutritional stress. Why would switching to a more advanced way of living make humans physically worse off? Bioarchaeologist George Armalagos, whose decades of research on ancient skeletons helped establish what's now called the agricultural paradox, found that the shift to farming coincided with a measurable decline in health across multiple early civilizations, not just one isolated site. This wasn't a regional accident. It happened again and again on different continents with different crops among unrelated populations. Whatever caused it wasn't local, it was structural. Because farming demanded fixed hours, repetitive motion, and a single source of food instead of a varied diet, you couldn't just rest when you were tired. Crops didn't wait. Animals didn't feed themselves. The work expanded to fill the available time, and then it kept expanding. This is the moment something split. For nearly the entire span of human existence, work flexed around the body's needs. After agriculture, the body was expected to flex around the work. And that pattern never reversed, it only intensified. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution, and the split becomes even sharper. Suddenly time itself gets divided into units. Clocks appear in factories. Shifts appear. The 8, 10, even 12-hour workday becomes standard, not because the human body suddenly needed that much labor to survive, but because machines could run that long and humans were expected to match them. Stop and notice something. Each shift, agriculture and then industry, made the workday longer while convincing people it was progress. That pattern is still running today, just with a different machine. Now it's a phone. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Your body, biologically, is still running ancient software. The same brain chemistry that rewarded a hunter-gatherer for resting after a successful hunt is the same brain chemistry running in you right now. But the world around that brain changed completely. Psychologist and researcher Daniel Lieberman, who has spent decades studying the evolutionary mismatch between ancestral bodies and modern environments, has pointed out that humans evolved to conserve energy whenever possible, not to seek out exercise or constant activity for its own sake. Yet today, you're expected to sit through 8 hours of low-movement work and then somehow find separate time to exercise, just to undo the damage of the sitting itself. Your ancestors didn't need a gym membership. Their daily life already included walking, carrying, climbing, and bursts of intense effort, spaced out, then followed by real rest. You don't get that built-in balance anymore. You have to manufacture it, and most days you don't have time to. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. It's not just your muscles that are mismatched. It's your sense of when to stop. So why does this matter to you, specifically right now? Because that 15-hour workweek didn't disappear because humans got lazier. It disappeared because somewhere between agriculture and industry, more output became the goal instead of enough output. And once that shift happened, there was no natural ceiling anymore. No instinct that said, "This is enough, stop now." A hunter-gatherer's body told them when they'd done enough. Hunger satisfied, shelter secure, time to rest. Modern work has no equivalent signal. There's always one more email, one more task, one more thing that could, in theory, be done. Researchers studying burnout in modern workplaces have repeatedly found that the absence of a clear stopping point, not the workload itself, is one of the strongest predictors of chronic stress and exhaustion. Organizational psychologist Christina Maslach, whose research effectively defined how burnout is measured worldwide, identified lack of control and lack of clear boundaries as two of the strongest drivers of chronic exhaustion, ranking above raw hours worked. Your ancestors had a stopping point built into their biology. You don't. And it goes deeper than scheduling. Your appetite works the same broken way. For most of human history, food was unpredictable, so your brain evolved to crave calorie-dense food whenever it was available, because the next meal was never guaranteed. Now calorie-dense food is available every hour of every day, and that ancient craving never got the memo that scarcity ended. Here's a fact that surprises almost everyone who hears it. Sleep researcher Jerome Siegel led a study observing 3 modern hunter-gatherer groups across different continents, populations with no electricity, no clocks, and no exposure to industrial schedules. If the popular image of cavemen were true, you'd expect them to sleep enormous stretches the moment the sun went down. They didn't. They averaged just under 6.5 hours of sleep a night, remarkably close to what many sleep-deprived modern adults already get. But there was one critical difference. They almost never reported insomnia. Their bodies cooled down gradually as ambient temperature dropped after sunset, and their sleep was tightly synced to that natural temperature curve, not to anxiety about tomorrow's schedule. You sleep in a climate-controlled room, scrolling a backlit screen until the moment you decide to close your eyes, then expect your body to switch off instantly. It can't. It was never built to. Remember that question from the start: why your body still hasn't caught up to the version of work we invented. Here it is. Your stress response, your appetite regulation, your sleep cycle, your sense of enough. None of it updated when farming began, and none of it updated when factories appeared, and none of it has updated for the always-on world you live in now. You are running prehistoric hardware through an environment it was never designed for. That's not a flaw in you. It's a mismatch between your biology and your environment. And mismatches don't get fixed by trying harder. They get fixed by understanding the gap and working with it instead of against it. Some modern communities are already proving this. Companies experimenting with 4-day workweeks have reported productivity holding steady or even rising, despite fewer hours worked. That sounds radical today. To a Jew/Honsi forager 15,000 years ago, it would have sounded like an obvious, unremarkable amount of work. Maybe the most radical idea isn't working less. Maybe it's remembering that for almost the entire history of our species, less was the default, and more was the exception we built, not the standard we inherited. Think about what that means for tomorrow morning. You don't need to live in a hut to apply any of this. You need a stopping point your ancestors had automatically, and you have to build on purpose. A clear end to the workday that isn't decided by whether the inbox is empty, because the inbox is never empty. A walk that isn't logged as exercise, just movement woven through the day the way it always used to be. A dark, cool room at night instead of a lit screen fighting your own biology. None of this requires more discipline. It requires less interference. Your body already knows how to rest, how to eat, how to move, and how to sleep. It's been doing it for nearly 300,000 years. The only thing that changed is the noise surrounding it. So tonight, when you check your phone before you even sit up and you already feel behind, pause for a second. You're not behind. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're just operating ancient instincts inside a world that forgot to ask if they still fit.